There's something about forbidden feelings that linger longer than they should. Like the scent of a memory you can't wash off your skin, no matter how many times you try. He wasn't supposed to look at me the way he did. And I wasn't supposed to feel anything stir within me when our eyes met, not with someone so much younger, someone I'd seen grow up in front of me. But emotions don't care for rules. They slip through the cracks, quietly, slowly, until one day you realize they've wrapped around your heart. And when his fingers accidentally brushed mine that rainy afternoon, I knew something had changed forever. Not loud, not scandalous. Just a soft shift like the wind before the storm. Gentle, barely there, but impossible to ignore. It all started with a quiet summer evening. The kind where the sunlight melted through the curtains and the world seemed to slow down. I was sitting by the window, a cup of tea in my hand, watching the golden hour paint the trees outside. The doorbell rang, and I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened the door and there he was, Armin, my best friend Zara's son. He stood there with a shy smile, holding a small basket of mangoes. "Mom said you love these," he said, stepping inside when I moved aside. "She asked me to drop them off." Smiled surprised. "She could have just called. But I'm glad you came." He looked taller than I remembered, more sure of himself. His features had sharpened, his voice deeper. Still, there was that gentle boyishness in his eyes that softened everything. We talked casually at first. He sat on the floor, leaning against the couch while I sat above, cross-legged, sipping tea. I told him about the book I was reading, and he told me about his university projects, his part-time job, his dream of traveling the world. His presence was comforting, familiar yet different. Like a melody you've heard before, now played on a different instrument. Our conversations became frequent. He started coming over more often, sometimes bringing groceries for my elderly parents, sometimes just stopping by to check on me. I told myself it was sweet, thoughtful. I told myself it was nothing more than a young man being kind to a family friend. But deep down I was lying. There was a quiet rhythm to how we started sharing space. He'd help me in the kitchen, tease me about my old music taste, sit close enough that his warmth reached me without touching. And I began to look forward to his visits far more than I should have. One rainy evening everything changed. The sky was gray, and thunder rolled low in the distance. He came in soaked, laughing as he kicked off his wet shoes. "You could have waited for the rain to stop," I scolded gently, handing him a towel. "And miss your ginger tea," he grinned, eyes dancing. He dried his hair and sat by the window while I poured 2 cups. The air smelled of rain and cardamom. It was cozy, almost too perfect. We sat in silence for a while, watching the water streak down the glass. Then he spoke, his voice softer than usual. "You know, I always felt like you were different. Not like others. You see people. You really do." I looked at him, surprised by the sincerity in his tone. "I'm twice your age, Armin," I said with a half-laugh, trying to deflect the emotion rising in me. "And I've never felt more drawn to anyone," he replied, eyes steady, unflinching. The room fell into a heavy silence. The kind that makes your heart thump just a bit louder. I stood up, my back to him. My fingers trembled slightly as I placed the empty cup on the shelf. I didn't know what to say. I wasn't prepared for this, even though part of me had longed for it. "I know it sounds crazy," he continued behind me. I can't help what I feel. And I don't expect anything. I just needed you to know." I turned around slowly, meeting his eyes. There was no mockery, no game. Just raw, honest emotion. "Armin," I whispered, my voice barely holding together. "I'm not someone you fall in love with. I've lived. And I've lost. I'm complicated. Messy. My heart has scars that you shouldn't try to mend." He stood up and walked toward me, stopping just a breath away. "And I don't want to fix you," he said softly. "I just want to be where you are." The distance between us was paper-thin, yet I could feel the weight of 1,000 unsaid things pressing against it. I didn't move. Neither did he. But something passed between us like a silent agreement. Nothing happened, not then. No touch, no kiss. Just the electricity of closeness and the comfort of being seen. After that night, things didn't go back to normal, but they didn't escalate either. It was a delicate dance, a constant pull and retreat. We respected the lines we hadn't crossed, but our emotions grew louder in the silence. Sometimes he'd cook for me, experimenting with recipes and laughing at his own disasters. Sometimes we'd walk in the park side by side, our hands almost touching but never quite. The world around us kept turning, but our little bubble moved at its own pace. There were nights I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering how it had come to this. Wondering if I was selfish for letting him stay close when I knew how he felt. But then I'd remember the way his eyes lit up when he saw me, the softness in his voice when he said my name. And I knew, I wasn't leading him on. I was simply falling too. One evening I sat with Zara, sipping chai on her terrace. Armin had just left after dropping me off. She looked at me curiously. "You've been smiling more lately," she said, a teasing lilt in her voice. I shrugged, pretending not to know what she meant. "Maybe I'm just learning to enjoy life again." She nodded, then looked at me with a knowing expression. "He's grown into a wonderful man, hasn't he?" My heart skipped. Did she know? Could she tell? I smiled faintly. "Yes, he has." Later that night he texted me. "Are you awake?" "Yes. Can I see you for just a minute?" I hesitated, then replied, "Come." When I opened the door, he was already standing there, breathless like he'd run all the way. "I couldn't sleep," he said. "I kept thinking about you. About everything. And I just needed to tell you again. I don't care how different we are. I just want to be near you. Even if it's just this version of being close." I reached out, almost without thinking, and placed my hand gently on his chest. His heart was racing. So was mine. "You don't know what you're asking," I whispered, emotion thick in my voice. "Then show me," he said. "Show me what it means to love you." It wasn't a plea. It wasn't desperation. It was something far more powerful, clarity. I let go of the fear. For that moment I stopped caring about age, about society, about consequences. I saw him, not as a friend's son, not as a younger man, but as someone who truly, deeply cared. And someone I had come to care for in return. We sat together on the couch, his head on my shoulder, my hand in his. The television played some movie we both ignored. The rain returned outside, soft and steady. It felt like the world was giving us a cocoon, a space where nothing else mattered. There was no rush, no need for declarations or promises. We were just there, together, two hearts finding rhythm in the quiet. In the days that followed, we didn't put labels on anything. We continued our little rituals. Long walks, late-night chats, shared meals. But there was an understanding now. A silent truth between us that didn't need to be spoken. Sometimes love doesn't arrive with grand gestures or dramatic confessions. Sometimes it comes in softly, through shared glances, warm silences, and the feeling of belonging. And even though the world might not understand, even though there were complexities and unspoken fears, I knew one thing with certainty. What we had was real. And in a world full of noise, his quiet love was the most beautiful sound I'd ever known.